Got a Polaroid 46-inch LCD TV from 2007. This one thinks it's a police car. The power light's just going red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. So we're going to take a look at this one and see if we can figure out what's wrong with it. I don't know that I'm going to be able to fix it or not. The guy that owns it doesn't want to spend much. In other words, he doesn't want to spend anything on it. But I told him, because I know the guy, I've known him for years, that I would take a quick look at it. So let's check it out. This is an old Polaroid LCD TV. When you hit the power button, the power light just switches between blue and red. Just cycles between blue and red. Not going to spend much time on this. We're going to pop it apart and just see if it's something relatively minor. The guy that owns this just has it at he's got a cottage that he uses, and he just keeps it down there. So he's not wanting to spend much money on it. If it's anything major, I got another 46-inch and I'll sell them for cheap. So we're going to look at this one quickly and just see if it's something that is relatively simple. He only watches DVDs on it, doesn't even use it for HD. So basically for him, the most important thing is having AV inputs on the back of it, as of course the modern sets don't have that. All they've got is HDMI, and with this conventional DVD player, that doesn't work very well. So I'm going to pull the back off this, and we'll take a look at it and see if it's something relatively minor, hoping it's something in the power supply that's acting up and we can get this one going. If you ever get one of these TVs that need to come apart, you remove all the screws, you take the base off of it. The freaking back still won't come off. Why? Well, you have to lift this panel off, which of course is held in place by a couple screws along the bottom that you get to after removing it from the base. And there's one more screw here. Then you can lift this panel off to discover that there is 8 more. Is it 8 more or 6? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 8 more screws that go from here into the chassis, which prevents the back from being lifted off. Real pain in the ass. You know, half an hour later to get the back off it, plus you got to remove it from the base in order to do this, which means taking the TV and propping it up on something else or laying it flat. Big job to get into the set. And now we've got to deal with all this shielding, because of course the old TVs were shielded like crazy because everyone thought these were going to cause major interference to radio and so forth. So they shielded everything like no tomorrow, like it was going to go into space or something. Now that I've got it into this point, I can start to check it out. It very likely is going to be one of the backlights has gone bad on it. It could be a capacitor, but it could be a backlight. This is fluorescent backlight, so one tube goes out, it'll kill the display. But usually you'll see them attempt to light. Anyway, now I've got the back off it, I can proceed to get into here and check out power supply caps and so forth, which is where I'm going to check. I'm going to look to see if it's got any bulging caps, anything like that that's a dead giveaway. And maybe we'll get lucky and it's something simple. Again, anything that's more involved than that, the guy's going to turf it, because you can pick up a TV like this for $10 a dozen. I got one that works. I'll sell it to him for 50 bucks type of thing, right? So, yeah, there's no money in this. I'm just kind of tinkering around with it, see if I can save it. Otherwise, off to the dump it goes. Shield is held in place by 3 more screws down here. This TV, by the way, is a 2007 model, which makes it 15 years old. Here's our main board. Of interest will be, of course, filter caps. That's the first thing I'm going to look at is some of these filters, just to see whether they are where the problem is, because it's of the era that bad caps with high ESR would cause this type of a shutdown. First things first, I'll remove the power board, undo the plugs. I'm going to remove the board right off the chassis so that I can check it on the bench. Yeah, those ground screws aren't tight at all. Just looking for any sign of arcing or a bad connection around any of these screws, because these were not tight at all on this one. So we'll tighten them up a little more when I put it back in. But I want to pull this board. I want to take the at least take the tops off of the heat sinks here so I can inspect underneath them. So here's our secondary capacitors. And ones I would expect to find bad are going to be anywhere in here. I don't see any with bulging tops. But we'll measure the ESR. I'm just looking at the bottom of the board here where there's contact made to ground. I really don't expect to find capacitors with high ESR on this. They've got 3 of them in parallel for one power source and 2 in parallel for each of the other 2, so I would expect that the ESR is going to be really low. I'll try measuring in circuit and I'll have to just disconnect one leg of the cap to measure them individually, but I think that the ESR is probably okay, and the problem is probably not on the power supply on this, which will put this into the unrepairable. See, the ESR is good. All these caps, I don't think we're going to problem there, unless we have a grounding problem or one of these connections is bad. Wiggle a few of the coils and see whether anything moves on the other side of the board, like this one here. I think they look okay, actually. Like even these connections don't look to be too bad. That one there maybe, oh, that looks okay. Looking at some of the ones on the transformer, and I'm just looking at the camera monitor to get a close-up view. That one there, I don't know. Does that look good? That one there looks like it probably couldn't hurt to redo it. Like I said, the other ones over here on the primary side, they look okay. There's a screw here that's grounding something. Let's try a different bit. See if this is tight. Not really. That's a grounding screw of some type. We'll tighten that down. I think it's just grounding the heat sink actually, but it was a little bit on the loose side. How about this one down here? Another one here that's loose. But again, I think that's just grounding the metal heat sink. I don't think it's going to have any impact on the circuit operation. It's either going to be a bad cap or a bad connection or maybe a bad backlight tube, which is always the risk. One of the fluorescent tubes has failed, and of course that will put the set into a shutdown. No obvious bulging caps that I can see. Even down on this side over here. Sometimes you get little ones that go bad, but they'll typically prevent the power supply from even starting up. So we'll check the ESR on some of these other ones, and then I'll try powering it up again, just see whether I get any voltages. Measure some voltages and see what happens. If I get my voltages and it's shutting down, then we're going to be looking at probably a backlight problem. Of course, this lead-free solder always looks questionable even when it's good. I'll redo all of these ones just for the hell of it. Redo the diodes. Check a few of the small caps here. These are like 1 microfarad at 50 volts, so 1 microfarad at 50 volts would be, that's very good. There's nothing wrong with those ones. Check a few more over here. These are all measuring very low ESR, which is good. Oh, okay. This one here, check this one out. This one I moved, it looks like it might be a crap connection right there, look. Well, that's broken or whether just the foil is lifting. But certainly shouldn't be doing that, so we'll just reheat that one. Well, I'm going to plug this board back in, just see whether if we get any different results now after resoldering some connections that looked a little bit questionable. See whether I get any different results and measure for some voltages on the power supply here. See whether I get my supply and 12 volt supply, etc. This is for the inverter. I think this one goes over to the these two go over to the backlight, and they're in parallel with each other, so it doesn't matter which connections, which connectors are plugged in. These are in parallel with each other. As you can see, this is the higher voltage supply for the backlights. I'll put the shield back on here. We'll just tape this on with some electrical tape. Okay, I got the board fastened back in. I'll plug in the 2 connectors, and then we'll apply power and just see what it does. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, then I think I'm going to stop right where I am, because as I've mentioned before, the guy that owns really doesn't want to put any money into it. And he made that clear from the start. I was like, let's see if it will work. And if not, he'll move on. So I got power. Okay, let's see what happens when I hit the power button. Power is here. Do I see any lights coming on? I don't see any backlights or anything from here. So let's power it up. We'll monitor for some voltages. So I got no voltage going over to the that should be a high voltage supply there. I think going over to the inverter board. You see this? There's nothing here. Half a volt. We have a power supply problem on this more than likely. Really, the other voltage is there. Yeah, 4 volts is there. That one's working. 5 volts. 5 volts. Could be the inverter itself. Could be something on the inverter board that has failed. That might be where the fault is. I'll just try. I'll unplug it here. I'll unplug the inverter from the power supply. We'll just undo this cable here. That should be the entire inverter supply. We'll see whether the inverter power comes back on. If I get power here now, then it's going to be something on here that's gone bad. Maybe a bad tube or something on the inverter. Still don't get anything. Yeah, so maybe something on the power supply here is bad. Anyway, at this point, got a bad power supply. It looks like, and it's not the capacitors on it. It's bad. So at this point, I think it's probably not going to be worth repairing, just due to the fact that the power supply itself is crapped out. All right, so we've narrowed it down to the power supply. Even could be the transformer for that matter, or something on this side. This power supply is working. This is the one that's generating all the lower voltages for the rest of the set, the 5 volt supply, etc., and standby supply. That's operating the main board. This one's working, but we've got nothing on the high voltage supply, which is what's driving the inverter. It could be the inverter itself could have failed and took something else out in here. Could even be the transformer for that matter. Most of these have got a thermal cutout on them, wired in with the coil, so that if it overheats, it'll shut down. But could be pretty much anything on here. It even could be the optical couplers that have gone bad, for that matter. But I don't think it's worth spending any more time on than has already been spent on this one at this point, because again, it's a TV that it's an old set. It's not a name brand. It's a Polaroid, and they're just not worth fixing. So I think I'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.